A poor single mom failed the interview and walked away, then the Mafia boss ran after her. The security camera outside Nero's restaurant captured it all. A young woman in a second-hand suit walking out of the interview, shoulders slumped in defeat, pausing only to wipe away tears before continuing down the rain-soaked street. Then, unexpectedly, the restaurant's notoriously ruthless owner, a man whose name was whispered in fear throughout the city, bursting through the doors and running after her, something clutched in his hand. What the camera didn't record was the moment Dominic Russo caught up to Sarah Mitchell, or the words he spoke that would change both their lives forever. It couldn't capture how this chance encounter between a desperate single mother and a man with a dangerous reputation would uncover a decades-old secret that connected them in ways neither could have imagined. A connection that would put them both in the crosshairs of enemies who would stop at nothing to keep the past buried. If you're already feeling the pull of this unexpected connection between two people from different worlds, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us how life's most meaningful relationships often begin in our most vulnerable moments, and how sometimes the people we fear the most are the ones we need the most. Sarah Mitchell was out of options. At 32, the single mother of 7-year-old Emma had been job hunting for 3 months, ever since the accounting firm where she'd worked for 5 years had abruptly closed its doors. Her savings were depleted, her rent was overdue, and the refrigerator at home contained little more than condiments and a half-gallon of milk that was quickly approaching its expiration date. The interview at Nero's restaurant had been her last hope. The upscale Italian establishment in downtown Riverdale was known for its excellent food, exclusive clientele, and generous compensation for its staff. The hostess position would have paid enough to cover rent and groceries, with perhaps a little left over to start rebuilding their emergency fund. But Sarah had known the moment she sat down across from the restaurant manager, Vincent, that she wasn't what they were looking for. His eyes had swept over her worn blazer and scuffed shoes with barely concealed disdain. The questions had been perfunctory, his attention already drifting to the stack of applications from candidates who better fit Nero's polished image. "We'll be in touch," Vincent had said dismissively after barely 15 minutes, not bothering to stand as Sarah gathered her purse and resume folder. Now, as she pushed through the restaurant's heavy glass doors into the dreary afternoon, Sarah allowed herself a moment of despair. The sky had opened up while she was inside, rain falling in sheets that matched her mood. She hadn't brought an umbrella, another small failure in a day full of them. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped out into the downpour. She had 6 blocks to walk to the bus stop, and then a 40-minute ride to pick up Emma from after-school care. She would be soaked by the time she arrived, but there was no help for it. The $5 in her wallet needed to be saved for bus fare, not a taxi. She had gone barely half a block when she heard someone calling behind her. "Miss, wait." Sarah turned, blinking rain from her eyes, to see a man running toward her from the direction of Nero's. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His dark hair was already plastered to his forehead from the rain, but he seemed unconcerned as he closed the distance between them. "Miss Mitchell," he said as he reached her, slightly out of breath. "You forgot this." He held out her resume folder, which she had indeed left behind in her haste to escape the humiliation of the failed interview. Sarah reached for it automatically, embarrassed by the oversight. "Thank you, Mr. Russo. Dominic Russo." The name registered immediately. Dominic Russo, owner of Nero's and 3 other high-end restaurants in the city. The man whose reputation preceded him in whispers and sidelong glances. Some said he had connections to organized crime, others claimed he was the head of a powerful family that controlled much of the city's underworld. All Sarah knew for certain was that he was wealthy, influential, and completely out of place standing in the rain to return a folder to a failed job applicant. "Thank you, Mr. Russo," she said, tucking the folder into her purse. "I appreciate you bringing this out to me." She expected him to nod and return to his restaurant. Instead, he stood studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Vincent tells me you're not right for the hostess position," he said finally. Sarah felt her cheeks warm despite the cold rain. "Apparently not. He's an idiot." The blunt assessment startled her. "I'm sorry, Vincent." "He's an idiot," Russo repeated matter-of-factly. "I saw you speaking with Mrs. Abernathy when you arrived." Mrs. Abernathy was an elderly regular who had been seated near the entrance when Sarah arrived for her interview. The woman had dropped her cane, and Sarah had instinctively stopped to help her retrieve it, spending a few moments in conversation before continuing to the manager's office. "She's a lovely woman," Sarah said, unsure where this was going. "She's also my godmother and the most discerning person I know," Russo replied. "She called me immediately after you left her table to tell me I should hire you on the spot. Said you were the first person in years to treat her like a human being rather than an inconvenience." Sarah blinked in surprise. "That's very kind of her, but I need someone to run my office," Russo interrupted. "My current assistant is leaving to have a baby, and I've interviewed 12 candidates, none of whom impressed me. Your resume shows you have accounting experience and organizational skills. The position pays twice what the hostess job would have." Rain continued to fall around them, but Sarah barely noticed it now. "You want to hire me?" "Without an interview." "This is the interview," Russo said, gesturing to the space between them. "You helped an old woman without being asked. You maintained your dignity despite Vincent's rudeness. And you're standing in the pouring rain having a conversation instead of telling me to leave you alone. That tells me more than an hour of questions in my office would." Sarah hesitated, warning bells ringing in her mind. This was too convenient, too good to be true. And the rumors about Dominic Russo. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Russo, but I don't know anything about you or what this job would entail." A smile flickered across his face, brief, but genuine. Cautious. "I like that." He reached into his jacket and produced a business card. "Come to this address tomorrow at 9. We'll discuss the details, and you can decide then. If you're not interested, no hard feelings." Sarah accepted the card, noting the embossed lettering and downtown address. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." Russo glanced at his watch. "Do you have transportation? I can have my driver take you wherever you need to go." "The bus is fine," Sarah said automatically, her pride asserting itself despite her circumstances. Russo nodded, respecting her decision. "Until tomorrow, then. Perhaps." As he walked back toward the restaurant, Sarah stood in the rain a moment longer, staring at the business card in her hand. Common sense told her to throw it away, to run in the opposite direction from a man with Dominic Russo's reputation. But desperation whispered a different suggestion. At least hear him out. What did she have to lose? By the time Sarah arrived at the after-school program, she was indeed soaked through, her hair plastered to her head and her suit clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Emma, waiting in the classroom with her backpack and a concerned expression, took one look at her mother and immediately offered her own small jacket. "You're all wet, Mommy," she said, her 7-year-old face serious. "You'll catch a cold." Sarah's heart swelled with love for her daughter, whose first instinct was always to care for others. "I'm okay, sweetie. It's just a little rain. How was school today?" As they rode the bus home, Emma chattering about her day, Sarah's mind kept returning to Dominic Russo's unexpected offer. The business card felt like it was burning a hole in her purse. Twice what the hostess position would have paid meant enough to not just survive, but perhaps even start saving for Emma's college fund again. Their apartment was small but clean, located in a neighborhood that walked the line between working class and struggling. Sarah had maintained it as best she could on her limited budget, filling it with secondhand furniture and bright colors to make it feel like home. As she unlocked the door, the familiar scent of the lavender candles she burned to mask the building's musty odor greeted them. "Homework first, then dinner," Sarah reminded Emma as they hung their wet coats by the door. "What's for dinner?" Emma asked, already pulling out her math workbook. Sarah opened the refrigerator, surveying the meager contents. "How about breakfast for dinner? Eggs and toast." Emma's face lit up. "With cinnamon sugar on the toast?" Of course, Sarah agreed, relieved that her daughter was still at an age where such simple pleasures could bring joy. Later, after Emma was tucked into bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit and the battered copy of Charlotte's Web they were reading together, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with Dominic Russo's business card and her laptop. A quick internet search confirmed what she already knew. Dominic Russo, 38, was one of the city's most successful restaurateurs. His flagship establishment, Nero's, had opened 5 years ago and quickly become the place to see and be seen among Riverdale's elite. Articles described him as intensely private and ruthlessly efficient, with a reputation for demanding perfection from his staff, but also for inspiring fierce loyalty. What the articles didn't mention, but the comment sections and social media certainly did, were the rumors that the restaurants were fronts for money laundering. That Russo had connections to the Calabrese crime family. That people who crossed him had a habit of relocating suddenly or disappearing entirely. Sarah closed her laptop, conflicted. The rational part of her brain said to stay away, to find another job, any job, rather than entangle herself with someone like Dominic Russo. But the mother in her, the provider who had watched their savings dwindle to nothing, who had lain awake at night wondering how she would keep a roof over Emma's head, whispered that she should at least hear what he had to offer. In the end, it was Emma who made the decision for her. Sarah opened her daughter's backpack to check for school notices and found a permission slip for a field trip to the Science Museum. Cost, $25. Due date, Friday. Today was Tuesday. $25 might as well have been $2,500 in their current situation. Sarah sat on the couch, permission slip in hand, and made her choice. She would meet with Dominic Russo tomorrow. She would hear his offer. And if it seemed legitimate, if the job was real and not something illegal or inappropriate, she would take it. For Emma, she would take the risk. The address on Russo's card led Sarah to a sleek office building in the heart of downtown. The security guard in the lobby checked her ID, made a phone call, and directed her to the 11th floor. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area decorated in muted grays and blues, with a stunning view of the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. A young woman with an elegant bob and impeccable makeup greeted her. "Ms. Mitchell? I'm Vanessa, Mr. Russo's current assistant. He's expecting you." Sarah followed Vanessa down a hallway lined with black and white photographs of Riverdale's historic districts. They stopped at a heavy wooden door, which Vanessa opened after a brief knock. "Ms. Mitchell is here, sir." Dominic Russo stood behind a large desk, his back to the door as he gazed out another wall of windows. He turned as they entered, and Sarah was struck again by his commanding presence. Today, he wore a navy suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, his dark hair neatly styled, no trace of yesterday's impromptu dash through the rain. "Thank you, Vanessa. Please hold my calls for the next hour." As Vanessa left, closing the door behind her, Russo gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit. Would you like coffee? Water?" "Water would be fine, thank you," Sarah replied, taking the offered seat and placing her purse beside her. She had worn her best outfit, a navy dress with a cardigan, both from the consignment shop but still presentable, and had arrived 15 minutes early, determined to make a better impression than she had at Nero's. Russo poured water from a carafe on a side table and handed her a glass before taking his own seat. "I'm glad you decided to come." "I'm still just here to listen," Sarah clarified. "I haven't decided anything yet." He nodded, seeming to approve of her caution. "Fair enough. Let me tell you about the position." What followed was a detailed description of what the job would entail, managing Russo's schedule, coordinating between his various business interests, handling correspondence, and overseeing the administrative aspects of his restaurant empire. The hours would be predictable, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, with occasional evening events that would be scheduled well in advance. The salary is $75,000 annually, with health benefits, paid vacation, and a performance bonus at year-end, Russo concluded. "Any questions so far?" Sarah tried not to let her shock show on her face. $75,000 was more than double what she had made at the accounting firm. It would change everything for her and Emma. "Why me?" she asked finally. "You don't know anything about me except what's on my resume and that I helped an elderly woman with her cane." Russo leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Sometimes I make decisions based on instinct, Miss Mitchell. My instinct says you're exactly what I'm looking for, someone competent, discreet, and unimpressed by the trappings of wealth and power." "And the rumors?" Sarah asked, deciding to address the elephant in the room. About your connections to organized crime? If she expected him to be offended, she was disappointed. Russo merely raised an eyebrow. Direct. Another quality I appreciate. He paused, considering his words. My father was Antonio Russo. Does the name mean anything to you? Sarah shook her head. He came to this country from Sicily in the 1960s. He had certain associations in the old country that followed him here. By the time I was born, he had built a legitimate business empire, but the rumors never quite died. When he passed away 5 years ago, I inherited both his businesses and his reputation. So the rumors aren't true? Sarah pressed. I run restaurants, Ms. Mitchell. Very successful, entirely legitimate restaurants. What people choose to whisper about me says more about them than it does about me. He leaned forward. I promise you this. Nothing I will ever ask you to do will be illegal or compromise your integrity. Sarah wanted to believe him. His explanation made sense, and there was something in his direct gaze that inspired trust despite her reservations. But she had Emma to consider. I have a daughter, she said. She's 7. I'm a single parent, and she has to be my priority. I would expect nothing less, Russo replied. The hours I mentioned are firm. I don't expect my employees to sacrifice their family lives for their jobs. And should emergencies arise, as they inevitably do with children, we can make accommodations. It sounded perfect. Too perfect. Sarah searched for the catch and couldn't find it. I'd like to think about it overnight, she said finally. This is a big decision. Russo nodded. Of course. But I do need an answer by tomorrow. Vanessa leaves at the end of next week, and I need time to transition her replacement. I understand. You'll have my decision first thing tomorrow. As Sarah stood to leave, Russo remained seated. One more thing, Ms. Mitchell. May I ask what happened to your previous employer? Your resume shows you worked at Hartman Accounting for 5 years, but there's no reference from them. The firm closed suddenly 3 months ago, Sarah explained. Mr. Hartman had a heart attack, and rather than sell the business, his family decided to liquidate. It was unexpected. I see. Russo made a note on a pad in front of him. Thank you for your honesty. I look forward to your call tomorrow. The bus ride home gave Sarah time to think. The job seemed legitimate, the salary was beyond generous, and despite his reputation, Dominic Russo had been nothing but professional. Yet something nagged at her, not about Russo himself, but about the situation. Why her? Why no? Was it really as simple as helping Mrs. Abernathy with her cane? She was still mulling it over when she picked up Emma from school. Her daughter took one look at her face and asked, Did something good happen, Mommy? You look happy. Maybe, Sarah hedged, not wanting to get Emma's hopes up. I had a job interview today that went well. Better than the restaurant one? Emma asked, slipping her small hand into Sarah's.